Good evening and welcome to this October 6th meeting of the Tompkins County Legislature. Please stand and participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Rich John.
Here.
Dan Klein.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Present.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Veronica Pillar. Lee Shirtliff.
Here.
Mr. Sigler has asked to be excused this evening. Shauna Black.
Here.
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Henry Grandison has also asked to be excused this evening. Deborah Dawson.
Here.
We have 12 members present. Oh, Veronica Pillar has just arrived. We have 13 members, no, 12 members present.
Okay. Welcome, Veronica. Okay, we have two proclamations tonight. The first one is in honor of United in Kindness Month 2022. Whereas bullying has been identified as a prevalent and serious problem affecting today's youth, and whereas 19% of high school students nationally and 21.7% of New York State high school students are bullied at school. And whereas types of youth bullying include physical, verbal, and relational bullying, as well as cyberbullying that involves threatening or harassing electronic communications. And whereas bullying has psychological, physical, and academic effects and adversely affects youth who are bullied as well as those who engage in bullying. And whereas more than 24 government agencies, community organizations, parents, and representatives from the county's 6 school districts formed the Tompkins County Bullying Prevention Task Force in March 2019. And whereas the task force's mission is to facilitate comprehensive cooperation across the community in developing and promoting appropriate bullying prevention and response strategies in Tompkins County. And whereas every member of the Tompkins County community, government agencies, community organizations, school administrators, teachers, athletic coaches, parents, and students can play a part in creating a bully-free environment in our schools, athletic fields, public spaces, and online websites. Now, therefore, Shauna Black, Chair of the Tompkins County Legislature, does hereby proclaim the month of October 2022 as United in Kindness Month in Tompkins County, in witness whereof she has hereto set her hand and caused the Great Seal of the County of Tompkins to be affixed the 6th day of October in the year 2022. And we have Brandy Remington, a member of the Bullying Prevention Task Force, here to accept this proclamation on the task force's behalf.
Thank you for this proclamation and recognizing October as Bully Prevention Month. I hope you will check out our United in Kindness event series that's happening this month. We just want to thank you for joining the community and letting everyone know that there is a way forward beyond the fear and the divisiveness and the bullying, and that way forward really is through deep listening skills, empathy, inclusion, and kindness. So thank you once again.
And I have a second proclamation. Whereas the members of the Tompkins County Legislature recognize that the indigenous peoples of the land that would later become known as the Americas have occupied these lands since time immemorial. And whereas the county recognizes the fact that we currently stand on land that was the homes and villages of the Cayuga Nation and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And whereas the county values the many contributions made to our community through Indigenous peoples' knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and the deep cultural contribution that has helped shape the character of Tompkins County. And whereas the county has committed, through its diversity policy and other non-discrimination policies, to oppose the systematic racism towards all marginalized people, including the Indigenous people in our region. And whereas the county has for years committed to protect, respect, and fulfill the full range of inherent human rights for all, as set forth in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and numerous other international human rights treaties. And whereas the county proposes to honor our nation's, and more specifically, Tompkins County's Indigenous roots, history, and contributions. Now, therefore, Shauna Black, Chairwoman of the Tompkins County Legislature, on behalf of the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, recognizes the month of October as Indigenous Peoples Month and calls upon the citizens of Tompkins County to officially celebrate Indigenous Peoples Month in a manner that promotes respect, understanding, and friendship, combats prejudice, and eliminates discrimination stemming from colonization, in witness whereof Shauna Black has hereto set her hand and caused the Great Seal of the County of Tompkins to be affixed this 6th day of October in the year 2022. So thank you. I don't think anyone's here to officially accept this on behalf of the Cayuga Nation and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, but we will see that it gets to the appropriate person. And finally, there's not a third proclamation, so relax. But I did find out that since 1989, October has been designated as Italian American Heritage and Culture Month to honor the achievements and contributions of Italian immigrants, including my grandparents and their descendants, particularly in the arts, science, and culture, and I might add cuisine. So buon appetito, everyone. Please enjoy Italian American Heritage and Culture Month here in Tompkins County. And with that, let's see. We will have no executive sessions tonight. I don't see any need to reorder our business, and we can move to privilege of the floor. We have several members of the public who wish to contribute. For their benefit, I just want to restate our rules. Your time limit is 3 minutes. You will not raise your voice. You will not use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. You will not speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, you will leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring the time to another person is not permitted, and you will not cause a disruption, and if asked to leave, you will leave. So with that, invite Mary Hutchins to take the microphone.
Thank you very much. My name is Mary Hutchins, and I'm the interim chair of the Community Services Board. Tonight, I wanted to read you a letter that I believe has been forwarded to all of you. I'm writing regarding the proposed term limits for the advisory boards that are appointed by the legislature. As the interim chair of the Community Services Board, I've been asked by our members to share some of the concerns we have related to this proposal. Our board currently includes 12 members, with 2 waiting for confirmation by the legislature. We have 1 opening. Our best estimate is that 8 of the 12 current members have been appointed for multiple, more than 2 4-year terms. We're proud of how our board functions. We listen to each other, challenge each other, and come together to get our work done. Our members bring a wide range of expertise to the discussions we have and the recommendations we need to make. When we recruit new members, we're very focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion so that our board represents all voices in our community. In addition, our long-term members have strong knowledge of the purpose and functioning of the Community Services Board and significant understanding of the needs of individuals with disabilities in our community. We hope you can consider the following points as this proposal is discussed. Depending on how this is implemented, a large number of current members would not be eligible to continue. Potentially, there would be a 50% turnover in members over a short period of time. We believe this would be detrimental to our effectiveness. The next few years will be particularly critical as we support the merging of public health and mental health. Our long-term members have been integrally involved in this effort and are committed to its success. Some members are filling statutorily required roles on the board. It can be challenging to identify physicians and psychologists who are able to serve. Newer members who consider leadership roles on the board are much more open to this after serving for a period of time. We are concerned there will be a reluctance to step in if there is not adequate time to become familiar with role expectations. Finally, should this proposal go forward, we hope you will consider a transition plan that will be less disruptive, giving a year's notice for further future implementation, having the current term of everyone on the board count as their first term, consider a grandfathering concept for those who have served long-term. We greatly appreciate the members of the legislature reviewing our concerns and considering them as you deliberate. I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchins. That's valuable information. We appreciate it. Okay, we next have Michael Fenner.
Good evening. I'd like for you to picture in your mind many individuals in the Cherry Street area with lights on their forehead, grocery carts, wagons filled with things that have been collected at 5 o'clock in the morning. I see this when I'm up leaving that area. Also think about the number of crimes in the West End, somewhere around 1,400 since the first of the year. The art house alone, since the beginning of the year, 416. I'm a resident of Nate's Floral Estates. Since living here, I have experienced a family member that was burglarized and sexually assaulted by a resident of the encampment. I've had a resident of that encampment enter my home uninvited. I have spoken with other Nate's residents and they have had cars broken into, items stolen from their homes, such as propane tanks, wheelbarrows, bikes, whatever may be easy to grab and run. I've repaired the fence many times surrounding Nate's because some believe it may be their right to walk through. It is not. A resident was attacked and bitten by a dog while walking along the path of Brindley Street to Cecil Malone. Along with the fear of just walking on city property in the area, the garbage, used hypodermic needles, grocery carts, much of which ends up in the inlet. All of the encampments need to be considered biohazard, and I wonder why they haven't. So how did the city get to this point of out of control behavior? To me, the most significant is the admitted passive or non-enforcement of rules. Needle exchange program, making it easy for individuals to get services, and I've spoken to some residents of the jungles and asked them how and why they were here. They said all the free services and passiveness to enforcing rules and laws as it regards to the homelessness. Other communities are encouraging these individuals to come to Ithaca. Well, now they are here living, stealing to survive, and making it unsafe and uncomfortable for tax-paying residents of the city. The gangs and individuals selling drugs have made their way here because of the community's desire for chemical substances. If you're looking for drugs on any given day, you can find suspicious behavior all over the city and parking lots. A year ago, there were meetings discussing what was going to happen. And it was said that when Code Blue was lifted, that the individuals were not going to be allowed back into the Cherry Street area. Well, that wasn't followed through. So now the thought by at least one is that it will not be until 2024 until enforcement will happen, while others on Common Council have stated the residents and businesses can't wait that long. I'm requesting that the city take aggressive action working with the county take aggressive action working with the city to try to correct this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fenner. Next, we have Larry Roberts.
Yeah, can you hand me the microphone? So I was here, I'm Larry Roberts. I live on Plain Street in the city of Ithaca. I've lived there for 36 years. I've been a resident of the county for almost 50 years. So I'm beginning to feel like, you know, this is my part of the world. I was just here talking to the Government Operations Committee this afternoon about term limits. I've served on the Community Services Board, and the legislature has seen fit to and has been pleased to reappoint me since 1992. I'm the second longest serving member of the Community Services Board. I'm a charter member of the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee and a charter member, and I chair the Public Information Advisory Board. And I also am lucky to serve on the Human Rights Commission. So I've dedicated a lot of my working and professional and personal life to the county. One of the underlying assumption of term limits, at least as discussed by this body, has probably been the idea of diversity and increasing diversity, which of course I support. But I've been on the boards that I've been on for long enough to have seen lots and lots and lots of turnover, particularly to the mental health department, and now the mental health department and the health department. I've served with 4 commissioners, and I'm now watching the productive merging, even though I opposed, and some of you might remember that I opposed the merger. I really hope that you don't implement time limits, because I think you'll be losing important historical and institutional memory. And in places where, you know, leadership changes, it's important to have people who remember things. Also, and I'll end with this. The other day I was addressing Common Council of the city of Ithaca, and they gave Julie Conley Holcomb the key to the city for her long service to the city as a city clerk. It would not have occurred to anybody to say to Julie, oh, you've been serving long enough as the city clerk, so we'd like you to stop serving as a city clerk so that somebody else could serve as a city clerk. Appointed officials work for the county in a sense as well. And I don't think you'd ask people who work for the county to stop doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I think next up, we have Zach Wynn, who is waiting to participate via Zoom link.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Zach Wynn. I live here in Ithaca. I forwarded some links to a local news story that came out yesterday regarding the controversy with Councilor Barkin's statements regarding the article that was written by Deirdre Cross, with comments from Trumansburg Mayor Roden Hart regarding the impact that the reimagining public safety process has had on EMS response times. And I know that the chair of the legislature, Shauna Black, was also included in that story. I believe it has been shown to be conclusively factual that there has been an impact on EMS response times, specifically related to overdoses. Individuals who are brought out of an overdose situation are often combative, and police presence is required for the safety of the EMS workers. In New York City, there was just a EMS worker who was stabbed to death in a similar situation. So I think it's important to recognize that the reimagining public safety process has been deeply flawed from its inception. And I believe a full pause on implementation of the reimagining public safety process is required in order to sort out the mess, allow the ethics board to conclude its proceedings, and figure out how to get police officers to come back to the city of Ithaca. They are laterally transferring out, and there is no lateral transfers into the department. So there is an unsustainable situation that has been created, and people's lives are at risk. If it hasn't already cost lives, there are now apparently animal tranquilizers in the street drugs that are not responding to Narcan, and the street addiction has gotten completely out of control in the city. Michael Fenner remarked on what's going on in the West End. The gentleman who owns Ports of New York Winery spoke at Common Council last night and talks about the impact that it's had on his business. He's essentially living in fear, wondering if he should start carrying a weapon to defend himself. I think that the county needs to act immediately and declare a state of emergency within the county, because these encampments have spread beyond the city of Ithaca into the town. That was also remarked upon at Common Council last night briefly. So these issues are going to continue to fester, and waiting for winter to hopefully clear them out is not a realistic solution. There are people dying on a consistent basis in the county, in the city, and there's been virtually no response from the city government or the county. So I'm really going to encourage all of you to do what you can to start fixing this problem before it gets worse and more people die. So with that said, I'm going to yield the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. I have one more blue card, Deirdre Cross. Yeah, that one's generally on.
I want to read an email from a government official. This started with Tompkins Weekly, which was up until about a week and a half ago, my employer. Jessica, I'm sharing with you that I'm concerned about this week's Trumansburg Connections column in Tompkins Weekly. This is peppered with lies, misleading statements, and unfounded attacks on several topics under the guise of featuring a harmless activist and writer. None of the questions are fact-checked by the customer. The individual written was harassing many people on social media and thought of her venues. I expect that there will be others upset by this piece. I just wanted to make you aware of these concerns. Thanks, Dominic. The response. Thank you for reaching out. I will say that I had similar concerns myself going into it and did talk with my publisher and my writer about it. It wouldn't have been my preference that this person not be covered at all, but since the writer covered that without checking with me first, it was so close to deadline, I did what I could to mitigate things ahead of time. I was able to verify the statements of fact that he made, like in regards to the rally that you reference, and also had been to remove some quotes that were directly misleading among things like the pandemic. I left in anything that seemed more opinion than fact, even if I personally don't agree with the opinions in question. My sincerest apologies if the article's subject upsets you or anyone else. If you or anyone finds anything that is a statement of fact that is misleading or false in nature in the article, please don't hesitate to let me know. I and my writer did some research to verify what we could, but it was of course possible we missed something. Also, feel free to refer anyone that is upset with the article to me. If there is considerable backlash, I will talk with my publisher about these opinions. So that is a government official weighing in on an article that was already vetted and published for the 6th time regarding RPS in the publication I've now been terminated from. With that being said, this is a government official that has impeded on my employment, my opinion, and now my termination.
You know, Ms. Cross, you are skating dangerously close to violating the rules of your public forum here. So,
Public statement from your own commission.
but you are not allowed to use this forum to comment on the performance of a named employee. That's clear
Why am I
in
not
our rules.
allowed to do
Because
that?
that's the condition of using public
I didn't
statement.
name anyone. I followed your guidelines. I didn't name anyone.
Well, we can debate that. Your 3 minutes are
We-
up. Thank you very
That was
much.
not 3 minutes.
Yes, it was.
See you in court.
I look forward to it.
So do I, actually.
Goodbye.
Attorneys fighting over this.
Goodbye. Okay, moving on. There will be no chair's report because our chair is playing hooky, enjoying her last day of COVID quarantine. Get well soon, Shauna. And we have no chair's appointments. We have no special topical presentation or discussion. We do have public statement for municipal employees if there are any, but I don't see anyone. And we have privilege of the floor for legislators. Would anybody like to contribute? Okay, I've got Mike Lane and Amanda Champion and Veronica Pillar.
Two things I wanted to comment on, and thank you for the reading the proclamation about our indigenous peoples. I wanted folks to understand not only are the Cayugas part of Tompkins County, predecessors here, but so are the Onondagas. And I liked your comments about the Italian Americans. Columbus Day and Indigenous People Day, which we celebrate both on here in this county, is Monday. And I think it's a reason to think about those people, the Indigenous people and the Italian Americans. The other thing I wanted to mention was, had the privilege of being invited to attend the inauguration of the new president of Ithaca College, Legislature Terry Cornish. That happened Saturday morning. And if any of you were there, I don't know, but it was a spectacular event that was planned by the students of Ithaca College. It was filled with very uplifting music, amusing comedy, serious speeches, family, and among other things, I have to tell you that the Dorothy Cotton Singers, who this legislature helps to support, with grants from time to time. There was a huge group there and they sang. It was amazing that they sang. They did the song which is known as the Black National Anthem, and it sent shivers through the spectators' backs, at least this spectator. Look forward to working with the president of IC in the future, as I'm sure we all do. The president of Cornell was there and spoke, and we're glad to see IC back on the mend from its loss of so many students during the pandemic. But I wanted to tell you about that.
Thank you, Mike. Amanda?
Yeah, I was just gonna let folks know, I think maybe the speakers who spoke about the advisory boards have left, but most of you know that there's been a small group working on revising our policy related to advisory boards, which includes bylaws and term limits and all that good stuff. There's nothing on the agenda now. It's not coming forward anytime this month. We're still working on it, and that will go through GO before it comes to the full legislature. And it's all still up for discussion. There's nothing has been decided. No one has said we are 100% having term limits. But I'll just remind you all that the point of all of this was that our clerks here in the legislature office, a huge portion of their time is spent dealing with advisory boards, and our numerous boards that have numerous people who come and go, and it's a lot of work and a lot of paperwork, and they need to come up with a more streamlined system and possibly use some software that will help them in processing all of this. So just a heads up about that. I'm not exactly sure why speakers are coming tonight, but it is on the horizon at some point in the future to talk about advisory board policy. So thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. I have Veronica and then Shauna and then Randy.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Two things. One, I just wanted to also express my appreciation for the shout out for Indigenous Peoples Day. I think it's really important to acknowledge both that history and the struggles of the Gaigono folks living in and near Tompkins County today. There was recently a community read about a little book about the history up to the present day of the Gaigono put out by the History Center. And I know the History Center has another poetry reading coming up. I don't have the details, but I'd encourage everyone to if it's totally unfamiliar to you, look up Gaigono and head to the History Center and do a little bit of learning. The other thing I wanted to mention, since we've been talking in this legislature a lot about homelessness and unhoused folks, and we had this, and the population of homeless people in the county gets counted every year, at least in a yearly point in time count in addition to other ways. I just found out that this coming Friday on October 14th, our Continuum of Care, which sort of monitors homelessness, is doing a point in time count for couch surfers. So who are people who are maybe not living literally on the streets. They're living in a home, but not, it's not one where they own it or on the lease, or it's not really big enough for them. And if I can read in the words of the Human Services Coalition, although Tompkins County is perceived as a service-rich community, many services available in our community either require that people applying for assistance show proof of address through a lease or other agreement, or that those people are experiencing literal homelessness. Couch surfers typically fall in between these requirements and lack the documentation necessary to be eligible for those services. Additionally, interviews with couch surfers in our community revealed concerns for their safety and insecurity about how long they could stay where they currently were. These stressors decrease the likelihood that this population will seek out services or provide a mailing address in case it negatively impacts their housing stability. We want to learn more about these and other barriers and need your help to spread the word. So essentially, to be able to address this issue and help this population, you got to first connect with them, and to access services often count them. And the reason I'm sharing this is so that everybody can, who maybe has any connection to either a service provider or just like folks who are like, oh, this person's like couch surfing, this person's kind of homeless, to make sure they get counted in the survey. So you can go to hsctc.org/couch surfing. It's the Human Services Coalition website /couch surfing. For more information, and anytime Friday, October 14th from midnight to midnight, there will be an online survey open. And so getting the word out is the biggest part of this. So thanks for your help in advance.
Thank you, Veronica. Good to know. Okay, I have Shauna and then Randy.
Thank you. First, I want to thank you, Deb, for chairing the meeting. I unfortunately contracted COVID last week, and so I am on the road to recovery, but I'm still having symptoms and didn't want to get anyone there in chambers sick. And so I'm reporting live from my home. And I wanted to thank, I did have a few meetings before I got sick though, and I met with Michael Steitley, our Director of Emergency Response. Also met with Rorden Hart out in Trumansburg and Bangs Ambulance. And it was very nice having the conversations, receiving some feedback, and it appears that there is great support for the EMS coordinator that I believe is going to be one of our OTRs. So I wanted to provide that feedback to my colleagues. I also wanted to make a short announcement about I have reached out to individuals for the opiate task force that I was asked to assign, and the legislators on that committee are going to be Travis Brooks is going to be chairing that task force, as well as Randy Brown and myself. We're also going to be joined with 2 parents of people that have suffered from substance abuse disorder. And we are going to be joined by a few peers that have either entered into treatment or are using harm reduction. And then we will also be joined by Phoebe Brown from the city of Ithaca. So I just wanted to let everyone know of that announcement. Those names went to Frank Krupa today. And in the upcoming future, we'll be establishing some of those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. Get well soon. I don't want to do this again.
I know.
Okay, Randy.
Yes, thank you. I want to talk about the area around Nate's and the encampments. I have gone down there. I've been to Nate's. I've walked through there. I spoke to people and got some of the stories and situations they're in. I went to some of the encampments. One of them I visited. It was 5 males. They were very pleasant with me. I had some extra food from a chicken dinner that I attended, and they were more than glad to take that. I noticed that there was a lot of garbage around them. There were needles, and they were in an area where there was basically, I guess, a storm drain, and there were needles in the water. So those things are going somewhere if they're in the water. What I'm hearing from people is that the city of Ithaca isn't able to provide enough police. I think that's what we've read, and for whatever reason. I didn't think it really affected Newfield much, but it does, because I went to a senior event there in Newfield, and people won't go to Ithaca. They're afraid to come down here. So that means they're not shopping here. They're going other places. So it does affect them. I was surprised that they all spoke to that issue for them, that they're scared to come down here. And whether that's real or perceived, it is what it is. So I do believe that the county needs to do something to help the city of Ithaca come out of this crisis they're in of not being able to get police. I don't know what that is, but I do think it's something we should talk about.
Thanks, Randy. I know it's going to be on our agenda numerous times going forward. All right, does anybody else have anything? Greg?
Yeah, first, just wanted to mention, we had a great visit at the airport a couple of weeks ago. Randy, myself, Annie and Veronica all went and took a tour of the facilities. Very impressive. Just shout out to Roxanne and Josh and Tyrone for everything that they do there. We got to see some of the emergency response equipment that they have, learn more about the training that they do, the grants that they're applying for and the work that they're doing there. So really eye-opening to get to see sort of a behind-the-scenes operation that most people wouldn't normally get to see, and get a chance to get out on the runway. Ann and I got to ride in a fire truck, which those things are so cool. Can't wait for snow season to get in a plow truck. Felt like a little kid, but it was really neat. They take their job very seriously there. And it was also neat to hear how the first responders there at the airport are also helping out, interagency support in various ways with the equipment that they have up there. So again, thank you for their hospitality up there. It was really eye-opening. So just wanted to give the folks at the airport a shout out.
Thanks, Greg. I'm sure they appreciate that. Travis, was that a hand or? Okay.
I want to thank the gentleman from Nate's for coming to speak tonight. I encourage residents from Nate's and business owners from that area to come to every one of these meetings, every common council meeting, and share your stories. Until the electeds start to hear your stories and feel your pain, things are going to stay the way they are. We've been talking about certain programs and projects for over a year now, and nothing's moved. Things continue. Code Blue is coming. The problem is going to be much worse than it was last year. I can't imagine being a resident at Nate's right now. I can't imagine being held hostage in my community and feeling like the folks who are elected in this community, the policymakers, are fine with doing nothing, because that's what's been happening for a year now, nothing. So I encourage you to come and share your stories. I encourage you to bring others. The only way this is going to change is if people come and speak.
Thank you, Travis. Annie?
Thank you. I also second what Travis said. So thank you. We are listening. We have heard, and please come and tell us again, remind us, keep it on the forefront. I wanted to, the main thing I wanted to say right now is I've heard this a number of times that people are saying, blaming certain things like lack of staff at public safety departments on reimagining public safety. And I just want to bring a different perspective of it, that there has been for hundreds of years systemic nationwide unjust treatment of people of color. And we're trying to do something to remediate that. And might we not be doing everything right the first time? Yes, I do agree that we're not going to do it perfect. Might there be some unintended consequences? Yes. I believe there could be, and maybe there are, and I'm glad people are bringing that to our attention, and let's work on that, and we are working on that. And might some people be hesitant to travel that new path that we're going to be going on? Yes, and I think keeping these conversations, being open to listening, is one of the best things that we can do. And I do believe that we are headed in the right direction. So I think it's very important that we continue to do that as best we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Anyone else? All right, seeing no one, we will move on now to a report by our county administrator. Lisa?
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Annie, for those comments, because it's a nice segue into my report for this evening. I wanted to introduce Mona Smiley, our Community Justice Center coordinator, who's going to be sharing a brief update on the reimagining efforts. So I'll hand it over to you, Mona.
Hi, thanks, Lisa. Good evening, everybody. I just have a really brief update to share. So I'm going to share my screen so we can all see it. So, I mean, we've been busy. We've been working since the last update. We have we've started, we've launched another plan. All the plans that we're working on right now really revolve around, they're all related to data. So the one we're working at, the current one, as we've just formed a working group for to collect and evaluate the results of an officer-initiated traffic stops. This one in particular has two aspects to it. The one that we're looking at right now and the group that we're working with is to talk about the traffic calming measures and the study that's going to go along with that. It'll be something very similar to the Route 13 corridor traffic study that was looked at years ago. And so we're going to use a different approach with the same goal as traffic safety. We're going to look at, law enforcement involved, education and outreach, and then the traffic calming and control portion of it. So the way that we are hoping to approach the study is to use public input where we'll ask our community to engage with us where they can possibly identify areas that they feel unsafe and that could use some type of calming and control measures. Reaching out to law enforcement agencies to help identify areas where they see the most potential for improving safety. And then we'll use both the city and the county and other transportation and traffic planning efforts for public input. So we take the information from them and then send it out to the public to see if we can get some input. And we're also looking to identify more geographic or better data on traffic stops and the percentages of officers versus calls that are initiated by 911. So that's just, that's probably the latest plan and group that we've gotten started. We also re-implemented our officer wellness and we're meeting bi-weekly. And so we're looking at other ways that we can support officer wellness, trying to identify them. So we did a demonstration for an app that would be available to all law enforcement and EMS first responders. And we're also identifying possible peer-to-peer support groups every 2 weeks meet and we'll meet again in the coming weeks. Then we have the DA and assigned counsel data disclosure plan. So we've launched that group. That's actually been launched for community output. So we're utilizing our website to have individuals go on and submit ideas on what information they're looking for, what data do they want to know, do they want to be receiving from the district attorney and the assigned counsel. So short and sweet, and that's now what we're working on. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Any questions for Mona? I don't see any, Mona, and we appreciate your crispness.
Thanks. All right, have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Lisa, I take it that was your report as well?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so anything from the county attorney?
Briefly, we do have some.
Microphone.
Excuse me. I alluded to this, I think, 2 weeks ago. We seem to have an uptick in some litigation, and I'm going to prepare a memo to circulate to everybody rather than take up time here so you can see where we are with these cases.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill? Just a reminder, Bill is probably too modest to mention it, but we are very close to having a signed transportation agreement with Cornell and the city for the continued sustainable operation of TCAT. So thanks very much for your work on that, Bill. All right. Director of Finance, Rick Snyder. Hi, Rick. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you? Good evening, everybody. Chris, tonight also, we are looking at an investment policy that the legislature reviews annually, and it's scheduled for the next BCP meeting, which is next week. And I sent an email out to all legislators yesterday that outlines that investment policy. And we're only changing one part of that, and we're raising the threshold of monies that we can invest in New York Class. And New York Class is a state authorized cooperative investment program. And the email that I sent yesterday was sent out to answer some questions asked by legislators on what do we get in interest income. So I thought I'd report out on that. This year, we should be making $239,000 in interest income. And that's just the general fund. In 2021, that number was $71,400. And in my email that I transmitted yesterday, I explain our investment policy, the banks that we use, which are 7 banks locally here, and what we have invested in the past in, which was simply money market accounts, municipal super saver accounts. I also wanted to share tonight that we made an investment with New York Class that invested to the tune of $20 million. And we set up that new account. Mostly the work was done by Darrell Tuttle, our Director of Accounting Services, who is familiar with the program and worked with this same program with Cortland County. And I shared with you in the email some of the specifics of New York Class. And on the $20 million investment that we made, we'll be making, as of yesterday, 2.93%. Does that compare to the...
What is New York Class, Rick? For those of us who aren't in the know.
It's a state authorized cooperative investment program. So it's a group of governmental entities that band together that form kind of like we did with the Health Insurance Consortium for health insurance coverage. It's similar to that. It's an investment pool.
Thank you.
And in my email, there's a link to New York Class, so you can all read as much about it as you want to your heart's desire. I gave some general information in my email. It's a highly liquid investment vehicle. What does that mean? Liquid to us means we can get our money out within 48 hours. So even though we're going $20 million, we can get all of that or some of that back with 48 hours notice. Can we get a little bit better yield with a 6-month or 1 year or 2 year treasury? Yes, you could, but then your money's locked up for that length of time. So we picked New York Class. It's been in your investment policy for the last couple of years. It's not new to the legislature. We're just kickstarting it and getting it involved because, as you're all aware, interest rates are going up. And I have gotten a lot of input from various people on why we should be investing our money and getting a better yield. So our money market yields are as low as 0.25%. Our highest one is 1.4%. That's called a super saving account. So anywhere between 0.25 and 1.4 is what we're getting on all our other cash and investments. So you can see the 2.93% that New York Class pays is going to be a much higher yield for us. So I thought I'd outline that in my email that you've all received. We currently have cash balance of, it goes up and down each month, but it averages out to about $69 million. And that can go up $35 million one way or the other, depending on what month of the year it is. So even though it's 69 million, it can go up or down 35 million due to various fluctuations in our revenue stream, our cash flow. And I wanted to share with you that there's a breakdown in the email that shows how the rest of our cash is spread out through these other banks throughout our general region here. And I mentioned Tompkins Community Bank, First National Bank of Groton, Chemung Canal, Key Bank, JP Morgan Chase, and M&T. And I show the balances that we share our monies all throughout the different banks in our local region. And that's all I really wanted to share tonight. Again, the email is good, healthy reading that you can take a look at between now and next Tuesday's meeting. What's on the agenda for next Tuesday's VCP meeting is the actual investment policy that you revise and review every year. And so that will be going to the legislature for final approval on the 18th of October, the actual investment policy in that resolution. So I thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Rick. You said that our interest income last year was somewhere around 70-some thousand. So it's tripled in the last year. To what do you attribute that?
Two things, and that's higher reserves, $14 million more in reserves, and $20 million in ARPA funds, which we can be fully invested in and keep that interest. And so when your principal goes up, obviously your return goes up. Also, the interest rates are phenomenally higher than they were 12 and 18 months ago. So you're on the good side of investments on both counts, being that your principal is higher now in 2022 and interest rates are higher in 2022.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for Rick? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Rick. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on. There are no resolutions to be added or withdrawn to my knowledge. Does anybody? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately. We have two advisory board appointments, David Harker to the Strategic Tourism Planning Board and Sean Bossard to the Water Resources Council. We have Resolution A, authorizing Federal Transit Administration Section 5339C Low and No Emissions Vehicle Program Grant for Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit, Inc., ID 11143. Resolution B, resolution to support the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022, ID 11176. Resolution C.
Paul.
Okay. Resolution D, budget adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, grant acceptance and appropriation of long-term ombudsman program, LTCOP, ARPA funding, ID 11114. Resolution E, authorization to disperse additional county funds to the Community Housing Development Fund for 109 Morris Avenue, ID 11140. And I will take a motion for those. Thank you, Amanda. Second by Veronica. Roll call vote, please.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
with 12 ayes, 0 noes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Now we will hear from our standing and special committees. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
Thank you. Our committee has not met since our last legislature meeting. We'll meet again on the 20th. We will be discussing the Red House, and I've asked Katrina McClure to send out an email to the committee members to see if they'd be able to start an hour early so we can have an hour to talk about that rather than schedule another meeting, which some of the members of the committee are not fans of, let's put it that way. Basically, that's what I've got.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike? Seeing none, Government Operations Committee, the crown jewel of legislative committees, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Thank you. The crown jewel met today, started at noon and we ended exactly at 2 o'clock. we had a lot of discussion about a lot of different things, some of which we're going to talk about here in a second. We had a pretty long discussion with Jay Franklin from Assessment about his recommendation from a couple weeks ago to go to a triennial assessment and his subsequent decision to come back to 100% assessment. And he went through all of that. I'm not going to go through it all right now, but you are welcome to watch the recording of today's meeting. And as always, he's available if folks have questions about that. We did have another brief discussion about hybrid meetings and the local law that we passed related to how we're doing it now, where the majority of folks need to be in chambers or in person. And if there's an extenuating circumstance, such as having COVID or another illness or childcare issues, that one could attend remotely. And we also, this will relate to our advisory boards as well. And Bill pointed out a handful of advisory boards that in particular follow state law that will be required to follow these new rules. Let's see. A couple of other resolutions. And then we had sort of an initial conversation, well, not initial, so we've been through this before, but talking about mileage reimbursement for legislators, and there was no action taken, but it was another conversation. So obviously you're welcome to watch that as well. If there's no questions on that, I'm happy to do the resolutions.
Please.
Okay, so resolution F, rescission of resolution number 175, 2022, making a negative declaration of environmental significance in relation to resolution number 176 of 2022 and resolution number 176, 2022, authorizing the sale of Fall Creek Road tax parcel number 2-1-2 to the Village of Freeville. And I'll move that
And Mike Lane seconds it. Okay, any discussion, questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Greg Massey.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, next one is appointment of Democratic Election Commissioner for 2023-24. And there were 2 slight changes that were in your red packet.
So she'll be moving and considering the motion that's in your red packet. Can I get a second for that, please? Thank you, Veronica. Any questions or discussion? I don't see any, so roll call, Kathy, please.
Rich John.
Yes.
Dan Klein.
Yes.
Ann Corman.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Massey.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
Yes.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 noes.
Okay, and the third one is resolution calling upon Congress to amend Internal Revenue Service regulations for election workers. And I move that.
And Greg seconds that. I would note that Greg brought to our attention at the beginning of the meeting that the amendment, as it appears in your red folder, does not include a provision for forwarding copies to our federal representatives. That seems like a fairly obvious error, and Kathy will correct that. So that's what you'll be voting on. Any questions or concerns? Dan?
Could we just add NISAC to that list as well, please?
Sure. Does that need a motion?
Association of Counties.
That's fine. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, roll call.
Deborah?
Yes?
If you bring up NISAC, NACO may also be a good add as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody's relatives they want to send this to?
My mother would like a copy. No, I'm just kidding. No, this, Lisa explained in Geo, but this was an initiative of, I think, NISAC and NACO to encourage county levels to send support for this because it's happening all across the country in different counties with election workers and their pay. So we're not the only one. This is not a unique position to us. So just so everybody knows where this came from, it's a concerted effort amongst many counties across the country to encourage the IRS to make a change.
Yeah, as we're required to pay for early voting, which is a good thing. I'm not arguing with it, but it means that we need more election workers working more hours and they usually exceed the limits on contract employees. So thank you. Okay, Kathy?
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 nos.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And now we have Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality. Ann Corman, Chair.
Thank you. We met on September 26th. And a good portion of our fairly quick meeting that day was talking about the Recycling and Materials Management Department. They had some budget adjustments and we talked about their capital payment summary. One of the things that they're doing is establishing some funding sources for the Recycling and Solid Waste Center facility site improvements, and that will be a resolution that we'll consider at another legislative meeting. They also talked about one of their scales that needed to be replaced, one of the large scales. I can't remember if it's the one when you come in or when you go out of
It's the one when you go out.
the one when you go out, thank you. And so that is something that's going to, the total cost is going to be $258,000. And then the other one is not going to be far behind, possibly within the next 5 years, they'll need to replace that. And they didn't mention it here at that meeting, but I know our Weights and Measures Department helped alert us to some issues with that. So glad to see they're helping make things safe for us in the county. And Barb Ekstrom brought up again that she's going to be, the director of the department is going to be retiring next March, so she'll be sorely missed. And the resolutions, we had one we already passed in consent agenda, but I do want to say a couple things about it, and then I'll go to the resolution that we pulled. So the resolution that we did pass was to support the Clean Water, Clean Air, and the Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act of 2022. And in November, actually November 8th or earlier, if you're doing early voting, this is going to be on the ballot for us to vote for. And so I just wanted to let folks know, there's a lot of information online about this, but this is going to be the state's first environmental bond act in nearly 3 decades. And if it's approved by voters, $4.2 billion will go towards clean air, clean water, and the Green Jobs Bond Act, which would allow for multi-year investments in climate and environmental projects like climate change mitigation, flood risk reduction, open space land conservation, water quality improvement, and building resilient infrastructure. And it would also help support healthy communities, a strong economy, and local recreation. Then I would like to, in your red packets, you have an updated version of the resolution. C, it's establishing a task force to review the existing relationship between Tompkins County and the Ithaca Area Economic Development Agency. And I'd like to move the amended version in your red packet.
Do I have a second? Travis? Okay, any comments, questions, concerns?
I'd like to ask Shauna to say a couple of words about this.
Yeah, so I looked over the resolution and I initially had made some mistakes here, so I wanted to make sure that we had it right. I did ask Rich John if he would be willing to serve in this task force as a chair of the IDA, and having been the chair for the past couple of years, it makes sense to have him on this task force. Annie, can you tell me, is that on the amended copy that you all have?
No, it's not.
Okay, so I would like to make the amendment to have him added right behind Deborah Dawson so that it stays in alphabetical order. And then I would also like to add Roxanne Noble after Norma Jane, who is our airport director. I think it's important to have her voice there as part of the task force.
That's friendly to me.
Is that friendly, Travis? Is it unfriendly to anyone here? Seeing no one, then we will proceed to discuss and or vote on this with those changes. Does anybody have any comments? Lee?
Not so much my comment. Mike Sigler had sent a note earlier, and I'm curious as far as the task force composition. I think adding the chair of the IDA to it is helpful, and I'm glad, Shauna, you brought that forward. Could you explain this a little bit as to why it's so county centric with the composition of this? Is it strictly evaluating the county's benefit from the current arrangement, or is there a wide enough participation here to evaluate this outside of county employees and county legislators? You know, the importance of this stretches to other municipalities.
Well, I can take a stab at that, or Shauna can address it. If you look at what the memorandum of understanding says, the purpose of this task force is to evaluate the county's interest to provide direct, substantial, and or ongoing financial support to IAED. What level should that funding be based on? What's the best way to support it? And should any operational changes, conditions, or other changes in the relationship between the county and IAED be added? So the purpose of this is to assess the value of this relationship from the county's perspective, and also to consider what changes we might make in focus or emphasis that might make the relationship more valuable to the county. I also know that we have discussed the necessity to have members of this task force speak with members of the larger community who work with IAED in various capacities, and certainly their input will be considered. I hope that helps.
It does help. Our fortunes are all intertwined, and,
yes,
and certainly, we're always looking for increasing municipal cooperation and major changes from the legislature and how the county participates. It'll have a domino effect out to our districts.
And basically what we've tried to do is include the committee chairs of the committees that work either directly or tangentially with IAED, and similarly the staff that enjoy that same kind of relationship with IAED.
Thank you.
Rich, and then Annie.
Yeah, I think Mike Sigler in his email was asking if we could consider tabling this. I don't know if there's any interest in having a discussion about that. And Shauna, I appreciate you naming me to the task force. I would be very happy to participate, but I do note this is a very different approach than we did 5 years ago. And I think, well, I would certainly prefer us thinking about using the older model that we used 5 years ago, where we really looked for broad community stakeholders, in addition to the political element, to evaluate the relationship. I'm afraid we could well be subject to criticism that we will be making a recommendation to ourselves. We're going to have a good percentage of the legislature on this task force, and we will be making whatever recommendation we come to back for ourselves to vote on. I kind of like the makeup that was in place before, where the Chamber of Commerce was involved, the unions were involved. There were bankers, there were business owners, STPB chair and past chair, I think. It was a pretty broad swath of community that was looking at how this relationship worked. You know, I would certainly, and by picking various people, there were representatives from Cornell. I think there were representatives from the medical community. We could feel pretty confident that that task force had viewpoints from across the county. I would suggest maybe we want to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Annie.
So Lisa and I met with Heather McDaniel a day or two ago. And one of the things we talked about was asking them, you know, or I can't remember if we asked them first or they asked first, but agreed that it would be really helpful to get a list from them from IAED of organizations or businesses, entities, or people that they would recommend, you know, us talking with and consulting with. So, and then as far as the time frame, we want to, the sooner the better, we all agreed on, because we want to get this to them back by March, because they're already doing their 5-year strategic plan. I don't know if I missed anything, Lisa.
Thank you. I've got Shauna and then Randy.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Rich, but I also realize that this has gone through committee. And the idea of having our direct employees as well as legislators at the table having the conversation. I mean, in the end, we're going to be the decision makers. And I think the recommendation that's brought forth needs to be ours. It's the contract that we have with a specific organization. Whenever you're doing a performance review for someone, you wouldn't have them be the chair of that conversation. But you would, however, ask their colleagues and ask, you know, maybe some of their customers what the relationship is like. And so I think it's important for this task force to take a full look, to ask our community partners. Just because they're not listed as a task force member does not mean that they're not going to be asked about relationships and the benefits of the partnership.
Okay, so I have Randy and then Greg.
Yes, thank you. I brought this up during committee that rural towns, and Ann mentioned this and said she would remember this, that rural towns that I represent don't have any relationship at all with IDA. And I mentioned to Heather as well when we met with her. And some decisions are made sometimes that just impact them without any input from them. So I just wanted to share that. So
Thank you. Greg.
Yeah, I would be supportive of this going back to PDEC to have a little bit further conversation on the composition. I know it did go through committee. There wasn't a lot of discussion. I think since it went through committee, there have been a number of additional points of information that have come up that may warrant some further discussion, like potentially looking back at I think it was 2014 report and the 2018 report, and just having a little bit more of a robust discussion before going into this. My only other concern is the composition of the board in terms of legislature members. There's already a number of members who are also on additional special committees like the Community Recovery Fund and others, and also our chairing committees, which take up quite a bit of time. So that's just my only concern is this going to be able to fit into the already busy schedule that many other members have? So I would, you know, Rich, if you were to make a motion, I'd be happy to support it, to send it back to PDEC for further conversation, since we do have till March.
Amanda.
I'm just wondering, technically, who appoints this committee? Is
The
it
chair.
And what point of information?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we approving a resolution then?
Because it goes through it goes through PDEC, the chair nominates the people on the board, and then it goes through PDEC, and the memorandum of understanding says that this, this task force has to report to PDEC. I mean, if you would you prefer to have it done by chair's fiat?
I'm just, I mean, Amanda asked a pointed question. I was just asking what the follow-up to why are we then approving it if it's already appointed by the chair?
Because it's going to report through into PDEC. Amanda?
Well, maybe there is no process, in which case having the chair make a recommendation and the legislature vote on something to approve that recommendation is sort of seems to take everybody into account. So, I mean, unless it's written down somewhere that says, here's our policy of doing this, this seems to be, makes sense and process wise. I don't know.
I'm not aware that there's any rule somewhere that says how we're supposed to proceed with this. If somebody wants to make a motion to table it, I guess we can vote on that.
I'll make the motion to table. Let's send it back to PDEC and have that full discussion on, do we want it to be county, just county, or do we want the older approach?
Are you seconding, Greg?
I would second that, but I would just ask Rich, can we take away the word table and just ask it to go back, revert back to committee?
That's what I intend.
Refer to committee.
Refer to committee.
Refer to committee.
That's the proper way to do it.
Okay,
I would like to refer to committee. I would move that.
I would second that.
okay. Anybody want to address the motion on the, I see Shauna, yes. Shauna and then Amanda?
Yeah, so I understand Amanda's question / concern. And I guess my question to Kathy is typically whenever we do task force, there is not necessarily a resolution putting forth a voting motion. What makes this situation any different?
I really can't answer that, Shauna.
Okay.
I haven't reviewed the MOU to see what that says, so.
Okay. I guess what I'm wondering, is it because there's an MOU concerned?
Well, the MOU states that the county will convene a task force acting through PDEC. So I think that's why this has taken the procedural path that it has.
Gotcha.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, Amanda.
Well, I guess I would just ask Annie and other PDEC members, didn't you have a discussion about this?
Yeah.
Okay. So you already had a discussion and now it's being referred back to have another discussion.
Not a lot, not with some of the issues that people have brought up.
Okay, so we have Annie.
I was going to speak on the motion.
Yes, please do.
That at risk of repeating myself, or repeating what has been said, this is something that is what we're looking at doing. This task force is looking at the county's interest to provide direct, substantial, and ongoing financial support, what level of funding that should be based on, and what is the best way to fund that support, et cetera. It's all in here. So this is to look at the county's side of it. And I don't see why we can't do that. The county can't look at the county's interest in this. And we have an IAED board, or we don't, but IAED has a board it sounds kind of like you're talking about like convening a board like that. They have a board that involves legislators, administration here, city officials, members of all kinds of organizations and businesses in the community. We're talking about a task force to look at our side of this. So I am not going to support looking at it again. I think it should be county centered and That's it.
Yeah, just weighing in here, I don't understand. An MOU is a contract. When you assess the value of a contract to you as a party to that contract, you assess it from your perspective. You don't ask the other party to the contract and everybody in your neighborhood what they think. Certainly, nobody's planning on acting here without taking into account input from the wider community. But the wider community is not going to be the party to this contract, and they're not the ones that are going to decide what we want, for example, IAED to focus on in an ongoing relationship, and how much we want to pay them and what value we think we are getting out of the current arrangement. Rich.
Thanks, Deborah. Yeah, the difference I see here, if it was a contract where we were just getting the services, that makes perfect sense. This is a little bit more complex in that we fund the IAED and they go out and do stuff throughout the community. And trying to evaluate those impacts in all the different ways that we want economic development to proceed is more complex. And I'm not sure we're in a position to even know what we don't know, to ask the right questions. We are fortunate in this community to have people with tremendous business expertise and that have been directly involved in those economic development initiatives that I believe would be really well placed on a task force to say, yeah, this worked or this didn't work, and to help make a very strong recommendation. If it's just the county trying to determine what impacts were felt externally to the county, around the community and the county, I'm not sure we're going to get the view we really want. I'm certainly not saying there shouldn't be political leaders involved. There were before and there should be this round. But I'm just hesitant to say we will get the best recommendation, the broadest based recommendation if we're not looking outward. Thanks.
At the end of the day, though, it's much more complicated. You said it's complex. It is complex. They get a sizable amount of their funding from their board and membership contributions. And the question for the county becomes, to what extent do their activities benefit the county? And to what extent do they benefit the larger community? And sometimes that's a really difficult line to draw.
Yeah, if it's benefiting the larger community, the point I was trying to make, it also benefits the county. We win when the community wins. And trying to determine how that's happening is a broader question. Thanks.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the motion to send this back to committee? All right, so a yes vote would be to send it back to the committee. Kathy?
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
No.
Ann Corman,
No.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
No.
Travis Brooks,
No.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
No.
Deborah Dawson,
No.
we have 6 ayes, 6 noes, motion fails.
Okay, that brings us back to the initial resolution. Any more discussion? Greg?
I would just point out that if the motion, if this were to fail again, right, if the same vote was taken to move this original motion, this resolution wouldn't pass either. So it may have to get referred back to committee, or it would have to find another route to get through the legislature. For my colleagues.
Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would go back to committee because it's just a failed motion. So in my mind, you would need some other route, or which could include the chair just saying, here's the task force.
Okay. Let's vote.
Rich John,
No.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
No.
Greg Mezzi,
No.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
No.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
No.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
we have 7 ayes, 5 noes. Resolution fails.
Yeah.
Gotta have 8 votes.
You need 8.
Okay, moving on. Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee, Dan Klein.
Yeah. We met on, piece of paper I have here. There we go. On October 3rd. And it was basically a status update. So I'm just going to share a few factoids to tell you where we're at in this process. First of all, there have been 3 public information sessions. One was for not-for-profits, and the attendance at that was at least 150 people. There was a session for small businesses, and that attendance there was at least 50 people. And then there was an in-person session at the library, and there were only 4 or 5 people at that one. Our consultants, the MRB group, are getting 5 to 10 calls a week. They have 47 active inquiries, and of those, 2 of them have completed their applications. Of those 47 active inquiries, they broke it down for us in terms of who's applying. So it's 45% of those are from small businesses, 40% of those are from not-for-profits. There was 1 healthcare provider and 2 governmental entities. So I think that's that's kind of a nice spread so far, but I think we're off to a very good start. They've prepared an FAQ, a frequently asked questions page and sheet, and have posted that on our program page so you can read what those frequently asked questions are. And the next meeting of the committee is November 7th at 10:30. That's my report.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan? Seeing none, we'll move on. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Henry Granison is not here. Is there someone here who can report on behalf of WDIC?
Sorry. The Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee has not met since our last meeting, as the September meeting was canceled. And we are meeting next on October 26th. That's a Wednesday at 3:30 p.m.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair. Oh, I missed my committee. That gives you a little time. There you go. Rick Snyder pretty much stole the thunder about my committee. I guess the big deal is going to be the update to the investment policy. We're also going to be considering several motions that have to do with allocations from the contingent fund, an increase to the general fund transfer to the contingent fund, and some bonding resolutions. I'm sure you're all just dying to attend that. So thank you. Now, Rich John.
Thank you, Deborah. The Public Safety Committee has not met since our last meeting. We will meet again on October 20th after, I believe, our next scheduled legislature meeting in any event. The only other item I have is just to give you the jail stats. We're at 48 with 1 board out. So our numbers have gone up a bit, but they're still in the range of where they've been running. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Health and Human Services Committee. Dan Klein, you're up again.
Okay, we have not met since the last legislature meeting, and our next committee meeting is October 17th at 3:00.
Thank you. Well, this is the crispiest meeting we've had in quite some time. All right, there are no individual member filed resolutions of which I am aware. Minutes. Can I get a motion on the minutes? Randy moves, Veronica seconds. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
12 ayes, 0 nos.
Okay, I don't see any unfinished business lingering in the corners. So I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Travis moves, Veronica seconds, all in favor? Aye. All right, thank you all very much.
There are cookies in the back.